You're listening to the A Bit From Within podcast with Felicia Marty. Some people are more comfortable just jumping into new things and figuring it out, and they don't need time to adjust. And then some of us need time to really wrap our heads around things before we can take it on. Hello there, everyone, and thank you so much for tuning in to a new episode of the A Bit From Within podcast. I will share with each of you that I woke up just a little bit on the slower side today. This past weekend was another busy one, and then the day after, so Monday, started off, and it was a really busy day for me in the office. I had some onboarding to do with a new team member for my photography team. I had a call with my assistant and a call with a client and a team meeting and lots of emails in between. And I was sitting on Sunday night thinking like, oh my gosh, tomorrow's going to be so stressful. I have to record the podcast and I have to do this. And I was scheduling out like hour by hour in the day, and I was feeling so stressed. And I realized, I'm like, you know what? I do not have to record the podcast tomorrow. I could record it on Tuesday, and that will literally change a ton of the pressure that I'm feeling, because one thing that I really struggle with is feeling like I'm in Felicia Marty photo video mode and then feeling like I'm in A Bit From Within mode. And it's nice when there can be some separation there. And that goes on the other side of the coin too, where like today, I woke up and of course I can't help but check the emails and things like that, but I just kept telling myself, like, you cannot dive down into that road yet of like what's happening with the other business, because you have to stay present with what's happening inside of yourself today so that you can deliver a quality podcast and that you can be in this moment. And I will share with you also that I am feeling a little bit low energy right now, and I have to acknowledge that's just where I'm at right now. I think for me, there's this natural resistance when I am kind of in this slower groove. It's funny because I was actually hearing somebody else talk about this the other day. They were talking about how there's a lot of fear around going into a slower momentum. Like if you're not always having to take care of everything all the time, if you start to slow down for a second, you feel all of this fear that you're not going to be able to catch back up, or you're not going to be able to get going again, or you're not going to be able to find that motivation. And you guys know I totally resonate with that. I also think that for me, it has a little bit to do with and it's like a vicious cycle of anxiety, in the sense that like having a lot on my to-do list makes me feel a lot of anxiety. And so the way that I curb that, or the way that I fix that, is by just focusing on everything in front of me and feeling like really accomplished. But I don't know, you guys, I've been really trying to look back right now. So I guess I'll kind of briefly segue into our Astro segment this week on Thursday. So in 2 days from today that I'm recording this and releasing this, there's going to be the annual solar eclipse. It's happening in Gemini during this Gemini new moon. And this is in the middle of this series of eclipses between Gemini and Sagittarius. I think you heard me talk about this very recently. Actually, last lunar eclipse was in the Sagittarius Gemini axis. So it's part of this kind of group of eclipses happening in the year and a half cycle that are happening right now. And this one in particular is going to be a really powerful one for new beginnings, because we have this eclipse happening right at this new moon, and new moons are about intention setting and launching yourself forward and planting those seeds for what you want and all of that. And I created this ritual for all of those people who support me in the Patreon. And this ritual in particular for this week has a really big component of looking back in it. And it's basically about reclaiming your intentions. And the way that you reclaim your intentions is by really understanding, like, are you sure about what you're intending? Are you intending from a place of genuine insight from your heart? Are you Are you getting to the root of what you need? Or are you just going through the motions? Are you staying on the surface saying, oh, I should want to intend this, I should want to intend that, blah, blah, blah. So how I suggested doing this is by really looking at what has happened at different markers over the last almost year. So there was 3 points that I suggested. Look back at March 13th. Look back at December 14th last year, and then last June 5th. And those were kind of these pivotal dates to kind of look back and start to first look at it from an event perspective. What actually happened? What was going on in your life? What wins or losses did you have? What relationship changes might have come up? What kind of promotions or moves or just events happened in your life around those times? And then go back to what was happening for you personally. What kind of themes were you dealing with? What kind of struggles or intentions or celebrations or anything that was happening on the inside of yourself? And then you can start to go back and kind of see the correlation between the two. So as things were happening, how did you set intentions? As new things happened, how did you continue to let that shape where you were going in your life and where you were feeling like you wanted to? I love the word intention because I really feel like it's almost like your intention is yourself lining up in the direction that you want to like shoot your arrow, right? Like where you want to go. That's what the intention is carving that groove so that you can have a clear path forward. And I think for so many of us, we don't always have the wherewithal or the ability to slow down enough to say, okay, this thing happened and now my intention has changed. A lot of times we get so committed to our intention that we kind of compartmentalize it, and we allow ourselves to keep it separate from what we're actually dealing with. And I think what I've been realizing as I've been working through this ritual and really trying to reclaim intentions for this new chapter ahead, I realized that there are a lot of disconnects for me because I subconsciously do that thing where I do really compartmentalize it, and I almost have this spiritual part of me that has these intentions, that has this idea of where I want to go, that has an idea of what my heart wants. And then I have these different parts of me in my life that are, and I feel like the two move at two totally different paces sometimes. And I felt this way in so much of my life. And actually, I had a friend say something to me that really hit me because I was sharing with her about some big changes that might be coming up in my life, and how when I realized how fast things could change, I got really scared. It made me feel scared. It made me feel like a little freaked out. And she had shared with me, I think for some of us, some people are more comfortable just jumping into new things and figuring it out, and they don't need time to adjust. And then some of us, like her and I, and probably many of you out there, and I don't think this is talked about quite as much, need time to really wrap our heads around things before we can take it on. And it actually reminds me of back to one of those dates. It was around December that I shared with you guys that Dave was going to buy me that ring for a Christmas gift, and how I felt grateful, so grateful to have a chance to have like the ring before the ring, because it really took me realizing I was going to receive that to realize how hard it was for me to receive that. That's like still a hard thing, because even as Dave and I continue to move closer towards an engagement or getting married and all of that, I sit with this just real wrestling between, gosh, I want that so bad. Like I always joke, and my mom can attest to this, like I have pretty much been in love with somebody since I was 5 years old. I remember my first crush when I was in kindergarten. I remember telling her who I loved. And I always had a crush on somebody. And then, of course, when I was in high school, I started to, really struggle with like real unrequited love. I was totally the person who would fall in love with somebody who was a close friend and pine for that person and feel like there was so much happening in that relationship. And I was just waiting for the stars to align. I was waiting for the realization. I was waiting for that fairy tale, kind of things falling into place kind of moment. And, I would say that I had 3 relationships that were kind of different versions of that. One was, looking back, I was just like, oh, that wasn't love. That was just hope. And the second one, I was like, oh no, that was the first love of my life for sure. And we never, were boyfriend and girlfriend, but I learned so much from the heartbreak that I felt of losing him and the connection that I felt towards him. There's such a fondness there. And then the third one happened much faster, but was a very similar path forward, or a pattern. Pattern is a better word for that, where I fell in love with this guy. I could see it all happen. I had such a great chemistry. We were such good friends, and I loved him. And that ended in just a huge betrayal. It was one of those situations where he actually had started dating one of my friends kind of like behind my back. And then I didn't find out until months later. And it was really, really shitty. And that, I have to say this while I'm thinking of it. I always go back to when I found out. I was living at my parents' house at the time. It was after college. And I was in my bedroom at my parents' house. It was like the week of Thanksgiving. And I remember, I think, yeah, if I remember right, he told me via email, because this was back when us millennials would email each other things. And I just remember feeling so hurt and so angry. And that was when I realized, I'm like, the thing is about the truth is that you can deal with the truth, but you can't deal with a lie. And that was like, both of their excuses was like, we didn't want to hurt your feelings. We needed to figure it out. And so it was for your sake that we didn't tell you. And the truth is like, I knew something had changed all along. Like, I wasn't in love with him as much while, like, we had already had our, like, friendship and relationship. And then that thing had kind of started as, like, things started to change between him and I, which is fine. But the truth is, like, any person can deal with the truth. It might be hard for them, but if it's the truth, you can deal with it. What's much harder is to deal with a lie. When you feel like beneath the surface that somebody isn't being honest with you, it's like we all have those spidey senses that like it's like when we don't have all the information that we need, we know something is up, but we can't wrap our heads around it. And so something just feels off and it feels horrible. And then when you do find out the truth eventually, it pisses you off because you're like, this doesn't change the truth of what happened. So now I have to wrap my hand around the truth anyway. So not knowing and being under this lie, it only did me a disservice. It only does people a disservice. So anyway, that's totally off topic of where I was at. But going back to, all of this unrequited love I experienced, like truly, when I was in high school and those early years of my 20s, I think it also came from having a very Christian upbringing. So I went to a Christian school from 2nd grade until 8th grade. And it was kind of a Protestant kind of situation, a lot of the King James version of the Bible. But you get this idea crammed down your head that like what you're going to do is you're going to graduate from high school. At that point, I don't even think like college was being like presented as an option. It was just like you meet somebody, you get married, you have a family. And, my parents had done that. I mean, my dad's a little bit older than my mom, but my mom had me when she was 23 and she, found my dad, got married, had babies. Like, I think there was a lot of me that thought not only that's what you should do, but that is like just such a like a wonderful thing. Like I know a lot of people had that message kind of crammed down their throat, and they knew in their heart that they didn't want that. They knew they wanted more for themselves. And I'm not going to say that I didn't know I wanted more for myself, because clearly I look back at the past, oh gosh, like, let's just say like 20 years. And I can really see that. Of course I wanted more for myself, because the decisions that I made were achieving different things outside of that, because I've never been married and I don't have kids. But for me, there was always that yearning there. I always wanted to be and to find that steady relationship. I always wanted to be chosen. You know, I think back to that famous scene from Grey's Anatomy where Meredith is like, choose me, love me. Like, I feel like that has been my slogan. And I know so many of you out there too. That's why that show in particular is so awesome for so many of us. But there's that feeling of like, that's all I've wanted, is for somebody to see me and choose me and love me. And the past 20 years have been me realizing like, that's not what it's about, right? Like it doesn't take away the fact that I've wanted that, or that I have aspired towards that. But the truth for me is that there is more to life than that. And it's me needing to learn to choose myself. And I have had, when I finally broke out of that cycle in my early 20s of all of the unrequited love, then I entered this new series of unavailable relationships. It's like step 1, unrequited love. Step 2, unavailable relationships. And these were all different kinds of availability issues. There were people who were just never stood a chance to begin with. Like, they were not long-term people. They were just definitely things like relationships that taught me quick lessons about connection and what I needed and what I wanted and who was the right person for me. And then there was probably like another 5-year chapter before I met Dave, just filled with deep love, but with parts that were just unavailable. Whether that was complications in our lives that just made it completely incompatible. And then there was, just where everything seemed like it clicked, and they were, this person was physically available and emotionally available in a lot of ways, but then in the most important ways, they were not, and it didn't work out. And all of that, all of this history of, like 15 years worth of failed relationships, and maybe failed is a harsh word. Maybe I could say they were relationships that all completed themselves and they were all for a reason or a season. And a lot of them were both. And that led me to the point where Dave and I met. And I feel like I've told the story of how Dave and I found each other and fell in love. But the big thing that has been common in Dave and I's relationship is this idea of like, if you're in, then I'm in. And if for any reason, like, this doesn't work for you, like, just tell me, because I don't want to do this if you don't want this. And I think we've both felt that way. In fact, that was one of the reasons that I actually really started to consider, or started to open my mind and my heart up to Dave, because I had been coming off of a really hard breakup, and it took me a very long time to get over that person, very, very long time. And Dave was my friend through all of that, and we continued to get closer and closer, to the point where he started to show me in very small and subtle ways that he was interested in maybe being more than friends. But he was also coming out of a really long relationship and a huge heartbreak and loss, and that was something we bonded over. But I knew that I did not want to be his transitional person. I did not want to be a rebound. I didn't feel like I had the bandwidth for that, nor was I a place in my life where that felt right, because I was just about to turn 30, and I knew what I wanted, and I didn't want that. But, he had texted me like, yes, I'm interested in you, and yes, I have feelings for you, but here's the thing, like, I will only like open that door or like approach you with that if that's something that you want to. And if you don't want that, then that's fine. Like, we can just be friends. Like, there is no pressure at all. And it was when he said that I actually felt like the pressure really relieve. And that's when I could actually open my mind up to it, because at that point I needed no expectations. I needed it to be something that I could think my way into and feel my way into in a very slow pace. And I think Dave and I both have this thing in common with our lives and our pace, where we both could go a lot faster, but we choose and we don't choose not to. I guess that's complicated. It's like some of it is just life forcing you to be slow, and then some of that is actually because that's how I actually need it, and the fast stuff is just an illusion. And I know I've spoken on stuff like this before, but I hope I'm kind of giving a different context of it. Maybe it makes sense in a different way, because I feel like I'm continuing to try to wrap my brain around this. But all of this to say is, like, Dave and I are getting ready to, in about 2 months, celebrate our 5th year anniversary together. And it has been a lot of hard work, and it has been a lot of overcoming. Like, we've overcome a lot together, and we have continued to go through challenge after challenge and been in a lot of survival mode together. But we have constantly been forcing the other person to get better. And I think that's what I've wanted and needed for a very long time. And it feels amazing to have grown in him with this relationship, where he is the first, person that I've been with who has been physically available, emotionally available, mentally available. I mean, obviously not 100% of the time, all the time, because none of us are like that. We all have our moments where we have to retreat and withdraw, and Dave and I have worked through those issues too. But he's always shown up for me. And so as we start to really think about taking those next steps, and those next steps are things that I've talked about with other partners in the past that it didn't work out with. And I imagined getting married to all of the people, like all of those people for the last 20 years. I've had moments of imagining what that would be like with each of those people. And I think the other thing that's hitting me as I realize this, I'm just starting to really feel the weight of experience and the literal age that I am. Like, I'm really starting to see the distance between where I am now and where I was when I was in my early 20s, and be like, wow, I know so much more now. But all of this 20 minutes of rambling right now is just to go back to my original point that I knew I wanted to get married for so long. So the idea of getting married is not a new dream of mine. But the idea of actually having met that person who wants to marry me, who's able to marry me, who wants to build a life with me, and is not just saying it, but actually about to prove it to me and like choose me and go through it with me, even though it's everything that I wanted and have wanted. And with him, it does feel like it clicks and it moves forward. For me, there is still so much fear. So much fear around, what if I got it wrong? What if this falls apart? What if it doesn't work out? What if he changes his mind? And that's like the easy fear. Then I think there's this whole other side of things around just like holy crap, is this thing actually coming true for me? Is this a dream realized? What's that going to be like? What does it mean to be somebody's wife? What, just trying to wrap my head around that. And also like, okay, then that means like, we can give the green light on trying to have kids, and like, what is that experience going to be like? What is that chapter of my life going to be like? And in some ways I feel a little, like staring back at my past, like with evil eyes, kind of being like, maybe this would have been a lot easier if I would have done this in my 20s, because I wouldn't have had so much time to get used to life as I know it. Because if I would have had kids in my early 20s, I would have only had, a couple of years of coming into my own before my life just naturally changed. And now I feel like I have, these many years on the books of the life that I've built, how I know it. And even though I've always wanted it to change, and I've always wanted to know marriage and motherhood, I still feel like that's a life that I don't know. And so, needless to say, I've been thinking about a lot of these things right now, and especially, I had no intention of telling any of these stories when I sat down to record today's podcast, but it really does come up for me as I start to think about just how my life has worked out and how long it takes me to wrap my mind around things, but especially, well, even the small things, but especially the big things. So I'm trying to give myself a little bit of that space right now, but I'm also at this place in my life where we are getting so busy and there is so much to do that I don't have a lot of time to think about those things as much as I wish that I did. And that brings up the other thing I've just been thinking about a lot, these, bits from within around, I've been looking back into my past and wishing, I'm like, why was I so stressed just then? Like, I wish I would have been more present. I wish I would have been more in the moment. I wish I would have had more fun. And I feel like maybe for me, that's the intention I really need to start looking at, both in my heart and in my mind and in my availability with my life, because it's so much easier for me to stay out of the fun track and in the accomplishing track. And what will that mean looking back, right? It's not like I look back on my past now and I'm like, man, I'm so glad I had so many days where I was so accomplished, right? Like, those aren't the moments that you think back on and that you relish and you cherish and you, that you crave, even though I am very proud of myself. So anyway, all of that is just to say this time of this, or at least this week leading up to this lunar eclipse on Thursday, has been getting me thinking about all of these different things. And, all of the astrologers right now are saying that, this particular solar eclipse is going to be a really powerful one for new intentions. And I think that it'll really last until this final eclipse of the year, which is coming up in December. So like this next kind of like 6-month chapter. And so I guess if I had to share what the advice I'm trying to give myself is, it's okay to let your intentions be a little out of the box right now. It's okay if your intentions are glimmers of what you want to accomplish. Like, maybe you don't know the whole picture and you're not just like filling it out, but you have like these little sparkles along the surface that you feel like you're kind of attracted towards those ideas. Let those things start to be what guides your way. And it doesn't have to be the same old stuff that you intend. I mean, if you guys are anything like me, I really fall into that trap sometimes where it's just like the stuff I feel like I should be intending, or the stuff that I just wish for. It's a little bit different than your actual intentions. And so allow yourself to just really tune into your heart. And if you want my actual, like the ritual for that I was kind of speaking about, and it goes through a couple more questions and gets you to really kind of start to solidify things, just go to my website. You can download this month's ritual guide for free at abitfromwithin.com. Just look for the new moon monthly ritual guide, or I think it's just the new moon monthly guide, is the name of it. And you can download it for free and check it out and do the ritual and allow yourself to just let your heart kind of expand right now. You guys, I think that's going to do it for today. I really, sometimes I feel like I have to put so much more into things. And the truth is, like, I'm really trying to tell myself, like, you don't have to work so hard. Like, it is okay to show up and be you and speak from your heart. And that's the whole point of this. So I'm really trying to actually force myself to live that. So I think that I shared a bit from within today. So let's go ahead and do a card drawing and see what the universe has to say to us. So we've got this deck that I'm loving, you guys, a super attractor deck. Just allowing myself to take a few deep breaths and kind of feel into the slower pace that I'm feeling today. Let's see if there's any guidance on whatever is ahead or something to complement this bit from within. Okay. The more I attune my energy with appreciation, the more the universe will deliver. Whew, that's such a beautiful compliment to what I was just talking about today. Because I think when there's a lot of fear, which there obviously is for me, and that's another theme that I've been thinking about that's kind of really come up for me in the past year, especially getting through COVID and all of the life changes, Dave going full time with me, all of that. There's a lot of fear. And I do, just hearing the way that that's phrased, the more I attune my energy with appreciation, the more the universe will deliver. I feel like that's such a gentle guidance of just continuing to just switch your mindset from fear to appreciation. And it doesn't even mean you have to not feel your feelings if you're feeling afraid, but it just means attune my energy with appreciation, like feel the appreciation, feel the gratitude from deep within, and let the universe continue to work its magic if you let it, right? If you conspire with that, actually. I like that way of putting it, because I do think we all play a vital role in what's happening in our lives, and it's the dance that we do with it, right? There's plenty of things that we can't control in our life, but the dance that we do, we can control that piece of it. So, all right, you guys. Well, that is it for today. Thank you so much for joining me as always. Please be sure to check out abitfromwithin.com if you're looking for any insight or blogs or yoga classes or meditation. And if you love all of this and you connect with what I share, check out our Patreon page. Join, the band of people who support me in all of this work. You can get ad-free episodes of the podcast each week. You get guided meditations, yoga classes, and so much more. And of course, the best part is just connection to have a dialogue with me. I know that there's so many online yoga platforms out there, but there's not very many where you can actually talk to the teacher and share what you thought and what you need for the future, or have questions. Like, you get all of that with me. So, yeah. That's it. Have a great week, and I'll talk to you next time.